This is Julian speaking, welcoming you to another battle report out of the breach. We're in week 7 of the FateofEric event, and that means we're in phase 4. In this last phase, you can choose to give Eric the Unsure 3 upgrades of your choice. Eric is fighting for the Commonwealth this time. Let's find out what he can do in another battle report out of the breach. I will continue to play Eric together with my gnomes, and will also continue the path of upgrades I chose. So Eric stays battle hardened and wears the polish helmet. And last but not least, I add the whetstone to his arsenal. Eric's wooden blade got sharpened by old Kelders and does now an additional +1 on slicing damage. So Eric deals a respectable +2 slicing now. We'll see what he can do with it. I am very proud to present you a gaming table I built myself to present Moonstone in a lovely setting. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Here you can see the depth of the Moonstones on the battlefield. Here you see the 8 characters who want to fight for the Lesherwood. And here the 8 for the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth win the first roll-off and choose to be the early bird, and Mama Gimble is the first to arrive to get an overview over the situation at hand. Jada sees a moonstone and gets right next to it, ready to harvest as soon as the others arrive. And the hero of our story, Eric the Unsure, walks up between the rocks and spots a cluster of stones not too far away. Next to the house, a creature out of the deep woods, the Wendigo, appears. Young Jack arrives next to Mama Gimble, ready to get involved in some fights. Hoff walks next to the Wendigo and readies his felling axe as he sees the gnomes. Quarrel prepares for a firefight with Jada. Gwendoline knows how important Eric is and cannot believe why he walks with gnomes. Graddock has some militia tricks ready to share with Crowell and stands right next to him. Mr. Toodles was rehearsing for the last few weeks with Hoff and thinks the grumpy fawn is still not ready for some jazz funk. Turn 1. The Leshavult have the initiative and hand the first activation over to the Commonwealth. Eric jogs over to the Moonstone and spends 3 energy to harvest the stone down to a 1. Hoff spends 1 energy to cast Hunting Horn on the Wendigo and declares a pink 1. The Commonwealth calls OK, and the Wendigo can move 2 inches. Hoff jogs, steps once, and rests on his last energy. Quarrel jogs and shoots his crossbow at the Wendigo and declares a green 3. The Leshavult call OK, and the Wendigo suffers 6 wounds and is pushed 1 inch directly away. And Quarrel spends 2 energy to reload. Mr. Toodles spends 2 to cast a healing on the Wendigo and declares a blue 2. The Commonwealth calls OK, and the Wendigo heals for 3. Toodles jogs and targets the Wendigo with a blighted elixir and declares a green 3. The Commonwealth calls OK, and the Wendigo moves 3 inches. Young Jack jogs, spends 1 to use his magic brew and declares a pink 3. The Leshavult call OK, and Jack gains 3 energy. He steps twice and rests on 3 energy. Jada harvests twice, jogs, steps once, and rests on her last energy. Graddock jogs, steps once, and the Wendigo takes a reaction step to be outside of 8 inches, and Graddock rests on his last energy. Gwendoline spends 2 energy to pick up the stone and casts Rejuvenate on the Wendigo and declares a pink 1. The Commonwealth calls OK, and the Wendigo heals for 2 and is moved 1 inch. And Gwendoline jogs for 2 because she is slow. Jack takes a reaction step. Mama Gimble jogs and spends 2 to pick up the stone. Jada and Hoff take their reaction steps, and Mama casts a Mother's Love on Graddock. The Wendigo spends 3 energy to pick up the stone. Jack and Graddock take their reaction steps, and the Wendigo jogs 2 inches because he's slow. And that's the end of turn 1. Jogging, stepping, harvesting, all the usual. Let's see how the gnomish attack for tea cakes and the second breakfast comes to a start. Turn 2. The Leshavult win the initiative and hand the first activation over to the Commonwealth. Graddock jogs over to the Moonstone and spends 1 energy to use Forgetfulness on the Wendigo to let him forget the mind control, and Graddock rests on his last energy. Hoff attacks young Jack because he is outside of Jack's engagement range. Hoff plays a rising attack and Jack a thrust. Jack would suffer 1 damage, plus 2 because Hoff can declare impact damage, minus 1 because of Jack's ancestral shield. 2 wounds for young Jack. And Jack spends 1 energy to take a reaction step away from Hoff. Hoff jogs to get in base contact with the Moonstone, harvests once, and rests on his last energy. Mama Gimble jogs, harvests to pick up the stone, and spends 1 energy to use her once per game ability, Mother's Wrath. Every other friendly gnome within 3 inches gains 1 energy, and she spends her last energy for a Mother's Love on Jack and heals him for 2. The Wendigo jogs and steps 3 times to get in base contact with the Moonstone. Quarrel jogs to be within 4 inches of Graddock to ignore catastrophes and shoots at Hoff. He can draw 2 cards because Hoff is in heavy cover and declares a green 1. The Lescherwolf accept and Hoff suffers 2 wounds. Quarrel spends 2 energy to reload and spends his last energy to shoot again. He declares a green 2. The Lescherwolf accept again and Hoff suffers 4 wounds. Mr. Toodles spends 2 energy to cast a healing on Hoff. He declares a blue 1. The Commonwealth accept and Hoff heals for 2. Graddock takes a reaction step. Toodles jogs and Graddock steps again to grant Jack heavy cover. Toodles spends 1 energy to cast a lullaby on Jack. He has to reveal the card while playing because of Graddock's smell a lie ability. Toodles reveals a blue 2 and Jack has to discard 2 energy. Jack jogs and attacks Hoff, and Hoff spends his last energy to go for it. Jack plays a thrust and Hoff a high guard and suffers 1 wound. Gwendoline jogs and casts a rejuvenate on Hoff and reveals a ping 2 because Graddock is within 2 inches of Hoff. Hoff heals for 3 and can move 2 inches. And Gwendoline rests on her last 2 energy. Eric jogs and rests on his 3 energy, and Gwendoline takes a reaction step. Jada harvests once, and Eric steps. Jada jogs over to the other stone and harvests the stone down to a 1, and Eric takes 2 reaction steps. And that's the end of turn 2. The gnomish attack is not really in full swing, to say the least, especially with the healing power of Toodles and Gwendoline, but the gnomes move forward, slowly but steadily, with Eric by their side. Let's see how the fight continues in the next turn. Turn 3. The Commonwealth win the initiative and Eric jogs to get between Toodles and Gwendoline and stays within 4 inches of Jack. And Gwendoline takes a reaction step. Eric attacks Toodles. Eric plays a thrust and Toodles a high guard. And Toodles suffers 1 wound. And Eric attacks again. And Mr. Toodles goes for it. Eric plays a sweeping cut and Toodles a thrust. Eric deals 2 wounds on Toodles because of slicing damage and can follow up with another sweeping cut to deal another 2 wounds. He could continue to follow up, but the other cards in his hand are all guards. Eric uses your hero to attack again without spending energy, and Toodles spends 1 to go for it. Eric plays a rising attack, Toodles a high guard, and is slain. And Eric rests on his last energy. The Wendigo harvests to pick up the Moonstone, and young Jack thinks about stepping in, but because of quite terrifying, he has to discard another energy, and a Wendigo that has Swift because of Hoff, stepping in is very unattractive. What a powerful position play from the Wendigo. The Wendigo jogs over to the other Moonstone and harvests to pick it up as well and rests on his last 2 energy. Quarrel uses Brothers in Arms 3 times on Jack to give him +3 on Arcane and Melee. Quarrel jogs forward, and the Wendigo takes a reaction step. Gwendoline casts Rejuvenate on the Wendigo and declares a ping 2. The Wendigo heals for 3 and can move 2 inches. Eric takes a reaction step to engage Gwendoline. Gwendoline steps once and jogs away from Eric. Jack attacks Hoff, and Hoff spends 1 to go for it. Jack can play 2 thrusts and Hoff a fallen swing, but forgets about his signature move. Jack can deal 5 wounds on Hoff, and Hoff can deal 1 on Jack. And Jack attacks again, and Hoff goes for it. Jack plays a fallen swing, and Hoff plays a fallen swing. Jack can deal 2 wounds on Hoff, and Hoff is slain, but he remembers his signature move and upgrades into Headbutt to deal 2 wounds on Jack, and Jack is pushed 1 inch away. And the Wendigo takes a reaction step. Jack uses his last energy for a magic brew and declares a blue 2 to heal for 2 and jogs over to Jada. And Jada takes a reaction step and uses her swift movement to move 2 inches. Jada activates, jogs over to Eric and steps once to get in base contact with him. Graddock jogs and steps twice. Mama Gimble jogs over to the stone and harvests to pick it up and steps twice. And that's the end of turn 3. The get in and get out quick playstyle seems to work for the fawns, and my gnomes having trouble to catch up. Is there any chance to catch a fairy or the Wendigo? We will all find out in the next turn. Turn 4. The Commonwealth win the initiative, and Jack jogs over to the Wendigo. We even forget that he has to discard 1 energy because of Quite Terrifying, and we see the Wendigo step away, Jack desperately stepping to catch the Wendigo, but there is no chance. And Gwendoline activates, jogs, and flies over the river into safety, and the game is over. A win 4-3 for the Lesherwood. The Wendigo as a Moonstone carrier on steroids. What a game. For me, it was fascinating to realize bit by bit that Band wanted to use the Wendigo as a defensive and very fast moving Moonstone carrier, and that went very well. I saw again that I maybe was a bit slow with my gnomes. My takeaway here is, when I see such a fast enemy on the other side, I have to advance much quicker to the middle and try to stay there. But hey, I saw an interesting and fast moving game from Band, who could hold the middle with Hoff just long enough to let the Moonstone carriers escape. Congratulations for a well-fought battle. And that's the end of Eric's journey for the Commonwealth. We saw him with 3 upgrades attached, and I think he wasn't dominating the game at all. I could have played him more aggressive in the middle, but I tried to take out a support piece in Mr. Toodles. It was fun following the journey of our beloved Squire, but I have to say my goodbyes to him. But fear not, I will not say my goodbyes to you, my esteemed audience, because we will see Eric hopefully next week, where he fights for the Lesherwood. Either way, we tried our best to bring a well thought out game to you and hope it was fun and interesting to watch. If you cannot get enough of Moonstone, check out Paulo's YouTube channel. He's recording games on the Tabletop simulator and is doing live streams on Twitch. You will find an awesome variety of troops and battle reports on his channel. Or check out the legend himself, Daniel from Ye Olde Battle Raps. He's doing Moonstone video battle reports since the beginning of time, and he's also a host of the wonderful Moonstone podcast. And check out Joe's blog, where you can find articles of different Moonstone topics. The links to all those wonderful people are in the description down below. You know what you can do to help the channel. Like, share, comment and subscribe, but most importantly, I want to thank you for watching. I will paint up some minis, edit more footage, and hope to see you soon for another battle report out of the breach. Let's find out what he can do in another battle. And Jack spends 1 energy to take a reaction step away from Joff. Eric jogs and rests on his 3. Eric is fighting for the